Welcome to the Alpha Wolf Impact Club. I'm Tim Weintraut, and this is where we shine a light on small companies with big ideas. Our mission here is crystal clear. We want to identify, support, and champion game changers. Those companies that are tackling massive challenges, revolutionizing industries, saving lives, or making us more efficient. For example, today we have Glen Lynch, CEO of Volatus Aerospace. Volatus is a leading global aerial solutions provider. They deliver innovative global aerial solutions, leveraging their expertise to drive meaningful outcomes for all stakeholders through a relentless focus on people, processes, and products. Diversified portfolio of hundreds of enterprise and government customers, global operations and capabilities through proprietary state-of-the-art operations control center, only company with commercial aviation, long-range drone operations, and cargo capabilities, providing diversified revenue base, customer-centric solutions provider. Volatus serves a broad array of industries, everything from utilities to mining and exploration, border security and defense, public safety and emergency services, construction and infrastructure, remote cargo delivery. I'm going to let Glenn tell you more in just a moment. This is not to be taken as investment advice. I am not a certified financial planner. This is for education and entertainment purposes only. I encourage everyone to do their own due diligence. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Capital coming at you with a follow-up. I just had this gentleman on not long ago, but we've had some interesting developments, and it's in an interesting space. Volatus Aerospace, Glen Lynch, CEO of the company, coming in on a Saturday to give us an update. You just had a pretty interesting week, Glenn.
Hey, Tim, good to see you.
Good to see you. You wanna share with the audience real quickly? Just share with the audience what Volatus is, in case this is their first time running into you, and then maybe give us an update on what just happened that I think is pretty significant news.
Volatus is an aerial intelligence and logistics innovator. So, we do a little bit of drone cargo delivery. Aerial intelligence, and the reason I say aerial intelligence and not drone intelligence is because we actually operate about 21 piloted aircraft and helicopters on top of about 100 drones. And we're somewhat of an ecosystem. So, we design drones, we build them, we sell them, we operate them, and we train people on them. So it's a full ecosystem. We're across Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Norway, and we have an office down in Lima, Peru. So we like to advertise ourselves as an ecosystem.
When you say train them real quickly, I don't want to take you off track, but is there like a certification or a licensing program? I mean, how does that, when you say train, what does that mean?
So training, I mean, in a professional aviation company, training is both legislated and just a requirement, right? There's technology and regulations, and they're coming together with tactical applications. So a lot of training required. There are licensing requirements. There's a lot of organizations that can do basic licensing in Canada, the US, Europe, and UK. We certainly do some of that, but the real focus for us is on tactical training and on training for things like sensors. How do you collect the data? What do you do when you do collect the data? How do you process it? You know, we've got data scientists on staff, geomatics professionals, thermographers, those sorts of things. So all of that, that's the aerial intelligence piece. And really, the objective is using data and analyzing it to create actionable intelligence products for the end use customer. That could be data over a farm field for a farmer or over a battlefield for the defense community.
Okay. All right. So that's and that is a dedicated division to your operation is training.
That's correct.
Is that's licensing in the US and Canada, or is it global, or?
Yeah, it's funny enough. The head of our global training strategy is actually based out of Portland. So she's in down in Maine. Danielle heads up our global training initiatives, which have operations in Canada, in the United States, in the UK. We're very, very big in thermography. Diane Heath and her team in the UK actually run one of the oldest and most advanced, and I believe one of the largest thermographic training and certification organizations in England.
Awesome. So I could actually, how long does a training program run for? Just out of curiosity.
So some of them are hours, some of them are weeks. It depends on what the training is. Some of it's online, some of it's in person, and some of it's self-paced.
Maybe you guys could teach me how to fly a drone.
Actually, you know what, Tim? That would be a lot of fun. Definitely help with that.
All right. Sorry to take you off track there. Move on. Pilates is you have piloted, you have drones, you build drones, you I think you cover the oil industry looking for gas line leaks. You actually
Yep.
told me something before we hopped on. You said, drones are for doing
Dull, dirty, and dangerous. That's where they replace human beings. So it's really installing automation and to some degree autonomy in jobs that can be hazardous or boring for human beings.
right. And I think that's a very good way of putting it, right?
Yep.
And there's a lot of truth there. So help me with I mean, the acquisition that you did, just announced, which I thought was really, really cool and could be very impactful for you guys moving forward.
So there's a series of things that have happened. Obviously, we're going through a kind of a global reset in how trade happens and how countries are approaching their defense responsibilities and so on. Canada is a country that has underspent its defense budget since at least as far back as 2015. Um, and we have a new government, and that government has recognized that shortfall and committed to both achieving our NATO commitment 2% by March of next year, which is an increase of more than 9 billion Canadian dollars in spending. That's an increase between here and the end of the year. And then also meeting their NATO commitments of a 3.5% and 5% um, spend by 2035. So, on top of that, this week they tabled a budget that basically creates the roadmap to get us there and addresses some of combines the requirement for the defense spending with the economic and trade reset that's happening globally. So, a lot more focus now on repatriating much of the defense dollars that Canada does spend. About 75 cents of every defense dollar that the Canadian government spends leaves Canada. So that was a trigger for us because it basically meant they're attempting to spend more in Canada with Canadian domestic capacity. So build in Canada, designed in Canada, built in Canada for Canada, but also for our NATO and allied partners. So that created an opportunity. So we saw this coming late last year and into early this year. The election of our new government and some speech announcements or government announcements that happened starting in June of this year actually stimulated our movement to refocus on stepping up to the challenge of helping make change in the Canadian defense community, but also helping build that domestic capacity. So we signed a partnership with a battery company. People asked us why that company. It was Volta Explore in Canada, largely because they have the ability to test their battery technologies down to minus 45 degrees centigrade. And remember, one of our borders is the Canadian Arctic, so that's a big deal. Secondly, we announced a few weeks back an investment in a manufacturing facility in Montreal, which is one of the top three aerospace cities in the world, to build drone technologies to meet both Canada's requirements and NATO partner requirements. And then lastly, in this past week, we announced the acquisition of some technologies from the UK. This was a family of medium altitude, long endurance drones. So drones that are capable of flying for anywhere from 15 hours up to 4 to 7 days and carrying, fairly substantial multi-mission payloads. So the reason for acquiring that technology is now we can actually move that technology to Canada, build it in the facility that we announced a couple of weeks ago, and introduce it to meet some of the unique requirements of Canada, which is a very, very large territory with very large borders and a large Arctic. And of course, the last part of that is how do you ensure that you can fund that? Well, obviously, we try to capitalize on all of the opportunities that are available through grants and other incentives. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to support your own initiatives. And while Volatus has done our CFO has done a good job in capitalizing us for our existing business plan, expanding into manufacturing can potentially create some new demands. So this past week, we announced a $20 million bought deal from Stifel. They led the deal for us and a syndicate of partners. And that was to make sure that we had the dry powder to execute on the plans that we've laid out.
Okay. And you raised, what was it? It was 20 million?
20 million. That's
20
correct.
million, and it was a clean raise, no warrants, right?
Yeah, I was very happy with that. Just slightly less than a 12% discount when we announced it and no warrants. So it
Yeah.
was, I think it was a sign that the market is starting to recognize our progress and our execution. And I was really encouraged with that.
Yeah, I was very happy to see that that clean of a raise, which has been, tough to come by in the last 5 years, right? I
Well,
mean,
and it's also why, again, I sing the praises of our CFO. He led the charge here, but he was able to execute on a series of raises. And people said, "Why did you do all those small raises?" Well, our stock price was trading, our market cap in Canadian dollars was down around 60 to 70 million. And of course, raising any significant amount of capital at those levels is highly dilutive. And
right,
and so what he did was, in fact, he progressed from that lower valuation. And I think again, forgive me because I'm quoting in Canadian dollars at the moment, but our first raise was down around 12 cents, and this most recent raise was at 60 cents. So we've continued to improve the price points, and also the terms of the financing have got more and more appealing. So that's allowed us to position ourselves well. Right now, we're going into Q4, we're living in Q4 with a much stronger balance sheet and a solid roadmap to continue executing on the path that's laid out in front of us.
so let's talk about, so you got the beyond line of sight, right? You've had that qualification for quite some time, right? And that's being able to fly the drones that you can't beyond line of sight, right?
Yep. So
Can
we've been
you
operating drones routinely that are 2,600 miles away from the operator. So on the other side of the continent.
so these the I guess the what do you craft that you bought from this company in UK, they could be autonomous, and they're motors as opposed to battery. Is that
Correct.
correct?
These are gas powered. Yep. When you
Okay.
start trying to deal with the long endurance, now obviously small motors because you're talking about drones that are measured in hundreds of pounds, not thousands.
Right.
But to be able to get the endurance in the cold weather and the considerable endurance right now, that's the most suitable power plant for that type of operation.
Right. And I think that's just so freaking cool, right? I mean, you've got a helicopter that looks like a helicopter that has no pilot, right?
So our trajectory, while we have piloted aircraft, there's no question we see the future in autonomous flight and automated flight. And so we have a helicopter that's capable of basically carrying 400 pounds and flying up to 125 miles. We have the drones that I was talking about earlier. You're talking about one of them is capable of carrying as much as well over 130 pounds in terms of a payload. And the other thing I should mention, Tim, which I think is really key, is everything we focus on, or at least certainly our primary focuses, are dual use technologies. So while they're applicable to the defense applications, they're also capable of the civil security and commercial applications like pipeline surveillance and power line railway and large scale, fire mapping, for example, in wildfires, which is a big topic here in Canada.
Yeah. No, I mean, you cover a broad array of things that I think are incredibly important, right, for humanity. And I mean, that is one of the things that we look for here at Alpha Wolf is not just the opportunity for a positive impact to our investment portfolio, but to what is it that the company's doing beyond that makes it special, right? And I think, I mean, you're one of the most diverse drone companies out there right now. I don't think anybody has as wide a breadth as you have. Would you say that's an accurate assumption?
Yeah, some of that I think that's true. I think largely because, we're an industry rocketing out of a nascent phase, and Volatus, 50% of our growth came through roll-ups. So, the diversity is by design. When you're in a small industry, you've got to some degree, tap into making sure that you're in all of the areas necessary to be able to generate critical mass in terms of revenues. So, Volatus completed this most recent acquisition was our 20th since 2019. About 50% of our revenue growth comes through acquisitions, and the other 50% is through a very large and very active sales team that are scattered across the regions that we're serving.
Okay. There's I, I know you're never going to be satisfied because it's constant effort, but you have an amazing team. Abby is your CFO that you're praising there, and you've got four other guys that you've worked with for a long time, right? I mean,
Yeah, long time.
you've been in this industry how long, Glenn? The aviation industry.
Well, aviation at large, 43 years now, and 43 years as a pilot, and 37 of them as an executive leader.
You have a pilot's license.
I
That's
am. I hold both American and Canadian airline transport licenses. So most of my life has been spent in commercial aviation. It was 2018 when I started focusing on drones.
Are you guys still involved with the company that's building the big freight? What
We are the American company, yeah, Nautilus. A
Yes, that's
plug
it,
in for
Natalie.
Nautilus.
Yeah,
Yep,
there it
they're
is. Yeah.
San Diego based. They're building a family of aircraft, but specifically cargo drones. So we're talking about, the one that we're involved in is called the Kona. It's 19,000 pounds. They're quite far along in their evolution. I think we'll expect to see them somewhere in the 2030 timeframe. But they're actually powered by the Kona is powered by two Pratt& Whitney PT6 turbines. It's a big blended wing body that is designed to carry palletized air freight and reduce the cost of cargo by more than half. So it's pretty interesting application for middle mile cargo, basically going airport to airport. That's an American technology. We do not own that technology, by the way. We just happen to be the ones that bought into it the earliest. We bought the first production slot.
Right. And I think you ordered one of the first models, right? I mean, you're one of
Correct.
the,
Yep.
yeah.
Big believers in what they're doing. I think they've got a strong team. They've got a lot of experience
It's
building.
a cool looking,
Oh yeah,
I mean,
it's
it's
really
just
something.
badass looking, right? It's like a stealth bomber, but it's
Yeah, it's
not,
pretty
right?
not a bomber. It's actually a commercial aircraft. It's pretty exciting. I think they're going to be entering the market at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, do you see this as what inning are we in, Glenn? Do you think for aviation and drones, and what inning do you think we're in right now?
Actually, having just watched the recent events in baseball, I'm reluctant to say because sometimes it goes on longer than you expect. But I'd say we're probably in the second or third inning. but the thing is the game's picking up in pace.
Right.
It's we're playing faster, and some of what's going on in the drone industry has been driven by unfortunate circumstances, basically geopolitical tensions and conflict. But that's raised awareness. However, the industry is full of brilliant companies, brilliant leaders that are driving technologies and whatnot. I think we're starting to see the maturation of a consolidation period, meaning that there's more companies are involved in helping consolidate the industry, just because that's the phase that we're at, like most industries that kind of rocket out of that nascent phase. But really, drones have been considered something separate from aviation in the past. There was drones and there was airplanes, but in fact, drones are aircraft by definition. So we're starting to get to the point that they'll integrate in Canada. Just this past week, a new set of regulations came into place that enabled this beyond visual line of sight in low risk airspace on much larger scale, increase the weight of kind of the basic weight of small drones up to just over 300 pounds.
Wow.
So it's we're making some good strides. Those strides are moving quickly in the United States with a lot of the current administration efforts for drone dominance. That's unleashing a lot of potential in the United States. Similar things are happening in other parts of the world. So I think we're still early, but the game is progressing quickly.
I think if you're just starting, if you're just going to try and start out right now, you're behind the curve, right? I
Sure.
there's a bunch of companies that are. I mean, one of the things that drew me to the drone industry was how fragmented it was, right? And there was no clear dominant player except for DJI, which really is the leader in the drone space. But in my head, there was that wasn't going to stay that way, at least not long term. And now I feel as though we're seeing those moves that are challenging DJI, and a lot of the tariff stuff, a lot of the political tensions are driving that. But you know, I'm seeing you, which has been acquisitive the whole time. I mean, you were I think one of the leaders in that, right? That you were starting out there and actively going after what you felt was going to be long term strategic drone plays, right? And I think you did a really good job with that, and you've positioned the company. I mean, it's tough for a one little company to start here, right?
Well, it's been very difficult the last couple of years too, because capital has been so scarce.
Yes,
But now what I find, like the industry is at a really interesting space. I sat on a panel. Maxim had a drone panel in New York recently at an investor conference, and I was fortunate enough to sit with five other companies, most of which I think you talk to regularly. And one of the things that I found, and it's being more and more evident on the panels I'm sitting in, it's an industry that has a lot of mutual support. I know recently you were talking to the CEO of Unusual Machines. Alan is an example of somebody that's building a business that's largely dedicated to supporting all of our other colleagues that are building their business, including us,
yeah,
focusing on critical parts that need to be manufactured. You have Ondas that's raised a ton of capital and is starting to consolidate a lot of businesses, particularly in the defense focused space. Although public safety is a big thing for them as well. Eric Brock is leading a hell of a charge in that space. Dragonfly is dragging in, or is doing not dragging, but making good inroads into the defense community on both sides of the border, Canada and the United States. There's just a lot of companies that are supporting one another. You're watching the industry; it's growing so quickly that competitors are largely collaborators, right?
yeah.
There's definitely healthy competition in places, but the truth of the matter is there's just so much going on that it's a rising tide. And I think that it's a very, very good time to be in the drone space. And there's a lot of good companies out there that are making progress.
It's not. What's funny is it's not just the drone space, right? So, for example, Ondas just got involved with LightPath and UMAC, and then Ondas and UMAC got involved with Copen, right? These are all American companies. One's a lens, an optical lens component now, camera manufacturing facility that has a special coating for thermal imaging that's made right here in the United States, doesn't use germanium, much cheaper, and oftentimes in certain environments actually better than the germanium stuff. Which all of that is innovation, right? That is spurred by this new area that didn't exist, right? I mean, now, and you and I have talked. I don't think we even know all of the applications yet that will drones will be used for. I think we're still figuring
Expanding.
that out, right?
It's continuously expanding. The big thing, Volatus played a different role, I think, than a lot of these companies for a long time. There's some level of convergence now. We were, some might say a little more shallow. We tended to focus on the areas where we could identify a need, a technology, and a regulatory enabler, and literally jump in and try and secure a customer activity to generate revenue, right? So we didn't hitch our wagon to a specific technology. We've largely been technology agnostic. As a matter of fact, one of our claims to fame until very recently was that we were technology agnostic, representing dozens of OEM partners that basically gave us one of the broadest technology portfolios in the industry. Now we've tended to start narrowing our partnerships a little bit because it's becoming more and more evident where the real demand is and where kind of the standardization is starting to happen, but also finding our own niche, which is largely in drones that are perhaps slightly larger in scale and greater capability. Because building a bigger drone is one thing, but having the qualifications and capability and training programs to allow those drones to operate are something completely different. And there's not a lot of companies that are doing that. So that's the area that we've started to focus in larger drones, providing the training, the infrastructure support, and largely the way we do that is by starting out by being our own first customer. We do about 1.1 million miles of pipeline surveillance integrity monitoring every year. Well, we're doing a lot of that specific industry, oil and gas. A high percentage of that is still done using piloted aircraft and helicopters because of the long range demands and also some of the regulatory restrictions that have been in place. Overcoming those things and introducing technologies that are capable of going out and flying thousands of miles in one go is really where the future is. And that's kind of where our focus is. And the minute we start looking at drones that are capable of flying thousands of miles, now you're talking power lines, pipelines, railways, borders, offshore, all of those environmental monitoring activities, all on a large scale. So we're finding our own little niche while continuing to collaborate with our partners.
You're also environmental and EPA or what is it? ESG, right? Friendly play, right? I mean, so
Yeah. So many of our technologies are green by design. They're battery technologies, and the gas-powered technologies burn a fraction of what piloted aircraft would burn. And we do a lot of work with large environmental companies, environmental sustainability companies that are contracting to, oil and gas, power utilities, and so on, mining organizations that are dealing with the environmental issues like peatlands and all that sort of thing. Those are all places that Volatus is actively involved.
right. So this is more than just a drone company. It's more than just a tech company. It's a training company. There's a lot of cool stuff going on at Volatus. You got like a kind of like a war room, huh?
Yeah, we
With the
do.
monitor and the whole thing, right?
Yeah, that's based out of Toronto. We call it our operations control center. It's a triple level security access controlled facility that can operate up to 200 drones at any given point in time. That's what it's been designed to do. And if somebody turned out the lights in all of Canada, that operations center would function independently for 6 hours.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really something. We're pretty proud of it. I'm still hoping you're going to come up and visit it.
I look, we talked about that, and I am absolutely contemplating doing that. I mean, I think it would be awesome to do. So, uh, Glenn, I followed you a long time. The stock for a long time struggled, but you have weathered the storm, and I think the last offering actually validates the fact that you got something special here, right? And it's only a matter of time before I know that you are working towards getting cash flow, you know, break even, and at some point cash flow positive, and then profitability. I mean, that is, we've had that conversation many times, right?
Yep.
That is in your sights. When you have a fast growing industry in a fast changing industry, uh, and no access to capital, because that's really kind of what it's been like for the last 5 years, right? I mean, it was, you had access. It's just the terms were, if you wanted to go into a death spiral, oh yeah, I guess you could
They
do
were punitive for sure.
it.
Yep.
Right. So now that changes. Hopefully the interest rates continue to, we get some more cuts. That frees up more capital, and that usually is what it takes to strengthen those small companies that want to. I mean, you're on the cusp, I would think, of going from a small company to, if things align properly, you can become a mid-sized company pretty quickly. Yes.
Yeah, well, I like to think so. I mean, the truth of the matter is, for the most part, we keep our heads down and keep working as hard as we can to move forward. You know, that Volatus is a commercial entity. We've been focused on generating revenue and growing since the very beginning. We're close to EBITDA break even right now on an adjusted basis. It's not going to take a lot more growth for the company to achieve a profit, net profit, and ultimately generate free cash flow. Those are big priorities for us. We make sure that the money is reinvested in the company, and it's an interesting organization in that it's run by a team of founders. You know, the operations center we just talked about in Toronto, for example, that was um, uh, Drone Delivery Canada, which is a company that we merged with last year. And Greg, who's our chief operating officer, was actually one of the original founders of Drone Delivery Canada. So that technology, you know, we've kind of taken what that company did with their technology and their best practices for remote operations, and they are, to the best of my knowledge, they've done more remotely operated flights out of that facility than anyone else in Canada or anyone else that I'm aware of. I think remote operations from that center in Toronto now is sitting close to 11,000 remotely operated flights that are documented. So a lot going on there, and all of these skills come together with a company that had already been doing a whole bunch of commercial operations out in the field. So now, instead of sending 5 trucks with 5 drones and 10 people out into the field, we send 1 truck with 1 person and 5 drones. So it allows us to, you know, mobilize and demobilize much more efficiently. It allows us to scale more rapidly and efficiently. So I think we're certainly pointed in the right direction, but it's taken a lot of work, and it's going to continue to take hard work.
If there's one thing that you could share with anybody that's watching this, that's either new to the story or is an investor, what would the one thing, what would you want that to be for them to hear from you?
So if I was to sum it up as an industry, I would say drones are the future. I think that it solves an awful lot of problems. It makes life better for people. I think drones contribute in a positive way to society, in all parts of society, both defense and industrial civil applications. And then what I'd like to say is Volatus is trying very hard to be the future of drones. That said, I think that the entire sector is worth paying attention. I think that we have a lot of good companies in our space. I think that the tide is rising, and I think that the entire sector is worth looking at.
All right, how about specific to Volatus?
Volatus Aerospace is driven by a team of the most incredible executives that I've had the privilege of working with in my life. And I'm talking at an executive leadership level. There's four guys, Abby, Rob, Greg, and Luke, that are all founders. They're all highly successful guys that are capable of doing my job, in some cases, probably better than I do. And they operate with a unified ego. So what's really unique with Volatus, no internal power struggles at the leadership level. The arguments are about what's right, not who's right. And I think that's one of our most powerful strengths. It's a group I'm proud to work with. I work hard to keep up with, and I think that that's probably the secret sauce in Volatus.
Yep, this is I would call this an impact company, right? This is a company that is good for the environment, is good for situational awareness, is good for monitoring. It's good. I mean, you guys save lives, right? It's good for hot spots, for fires. There's so many applications that that you guys are out there attacking. You had one for walnut trees. Was it walnut?
Yeah, Dutch elm disease. Yeah, it's a brainchild of Matt Johnson, who's one of the original guys in Volatus. He was the first company to, or the first CEO to sell his business to us, and he's still with us today. He's part of our training organization and probably doing some of the most important work in our company. But
Yeah.
just imagine he raised funding partially through grant funding and partially through school boards, and then developed a program called the Scientific Experiential Aerial Research, SEER, the SEER program, which basically trains students about how drones operate, teaches them to operate drones, teaches them about sensor operations, and then he took them out to collect data sets, which were subsequently used in a partnership with a university to develop an algorithm that's capable of doing early detection of Dutch elm disease, which is hugely damaging to large amounts of forestry. So now a municipality can hire even one of these students, for that matter, to go out and survey the tree canopy in their areas and detect Dutch elm disease early enough that they can now prune the trees or trim the problem as opposed to clear cutting and losing large amounts of forestry. Super proud type of work. I mean, I've got dozens of stories like that are driven by this one individual in our company.
And that's the focus. That when I say impact company, right? When you recognize what these companies are doing and what that impact is for everyone, right? Your company makes the world a better place a little bit. And if we can put a bunch of companies together that all make the world a better place a little bit and we support them, then what happens? The world becomes a better place every day, right? That is the goal. There are a lot of companies out there that are trying to do great things like you are, and they are doing great things, but they need support. And that's where one individual can make a difference. They can make a ripple, and then there's the wave of people. That the wave comes from the group, the groundswell that comes and supports and says, "This is why I'm involved with this company, and these are the great things that this company does," which then makes it the success that you hope it to become. Right? Then if you succeed, the world becomes a better place. And if you happen to recognize the company before they actually hit that threshold, odds are your portfolio, your investment portfolio will also do quite well. Right. So it's like a,
Well,
right. I mean, it's a kind of a combination thing. I've known you, I think, for, I'm going to say probably 5 years or more now. Was I involved in the stock the whole time? No, I wasn't. I'll be 100% honest with you. To me, it takes me time. I build relationships with the people that run the companies, and I need to know that they're going to execute, and I need to know they're going to do what they say they're going to do, and that takes time to build that to trust, right? Trust is a big thing, and just character of people getting to know you. You're one of the most solid guys I know, right?
Thank you.
Truly enjoy every time we talk. I feel smarter every time I walk away, right? So it's a good thing, and this is what I want people to recognize. Get get quit getting stuck in all the bullshit that goes on around you, the daily negative press and the division, and there's so many things that we can do together, united, that matter. Most of this stuff that's out there that people are divided on, a lot of that stuff doesn't even really, if you think about it, 10 years from now, it's not going to even matter.
It's just today's noise, I think.
Today's noise.
One thing I would say, you asked me a question of something that I think is important to investors. Here's another one, because a lot of investors, there's very few people that put the effort into getting to know me the way you do, for example, and you've actually met some of my leadership team. You've taken the time to come out and meet us when we've been in conventions that were proximal to you. But here's one for you. Our attitude as a company is that our investors are our partners. And I say that because I'm a major shareholder to start with. And in fact, approximately 22% of our company is still held by insiders. Our stock price has had a very good year compared to, now, not that that says that it's anywhere near where we believe it should be, but the bottom line is it's had a good year, right? We're up over 400% from where we started. And the key point that I think should be telling to investors is look at the insiders, because despite the stock having an extremely successful run, not one share has been sold by insiders. We continue to invest. I'm somebody, I make it a point to ensure that the interests of our employees are lined up with the interests of our investors, because our all of our full-time employees are issued stock options and
Which
RSUs.
is the right thing to do, by the way.
Well, the interesting thing is the only person, and I don't do this for the reasons that you might think, the only person that doesn't take stock options and grants beyond the very first issue when we first went public is me. And the reason being, I'm already a large shareholder, right? I already have a big chunk of the company. I don't believe that the secret right now for Volatus, we didn't take it public to take a bunch of money off the table. Everybody dreams they're going to do well one day. I'm no exception to that. But the purpose for taking the company public was to have access to capital to continue to grow, to support our M&A activities, to provide us with the working capital that we need to continue to make a difference and to really seize the day. And if anybody wants to look at why Volatus, or why I think Volatus is a worthy investment, it's because I think it's worthy enough that I leave my money in the company. And everybody, that the group of people I just told you about that are responsible for making the day-to-day decisions, they're all major shareholders in the company, and they're leaving their money in the company too. So I think that's a good reason. One day everybody will do well. I'm glad to say some of our early investors are doing well right now, but the truth is we're still just getting started.
Yep. And I agree with that 100%. You and I have talked about the path of potentially uplisting to a senior exchange. That is absolutely on your radar. You're not a dummy. You're going to do it when the timing is right, not just because the opportunity is there, right?
Correct.
Because that is not something that just fixes everything. Actually, uplisting can make it much more challenging. It's costly. You have to be pretty strategic when you make that kind of a move. Glenn, I just I appreciate you as a human being. I appreciate you as a CEO and a leader, and I love your company. I want to see it continue to thrive. And I am a shareholder, and I have been a shareholder, and I think that if you're not involved in the company, I think right here, right now is an interesting place to potentially get involved. I don't tell people what to do, when to buy, when to sell. That's not my decision. It should be yours. But what I do is I present the companies and what they do for us, for humanity, right? And is this something that you want to support? And if it is, then at 42 cents, your risk reward, I would say, is probably pretty favorable. What's the highest price the stock's ever been, Glenn?
Well, if I deal with the current company because it was two public companies that came together, so I'll deal with this entity. The Canadian in Canadian dollars, I got to remember where it converts to, Tim, because remember I live in Canada, so
Yeah, I know.
sometimes our first exchange was there, but we're trading in Canada about 60 cents, and we touched 98 cents not that long ago.
Okay. All
The
right.
chart in Canada and the US, they track pretty accurately with one
Do
another.
you think a dollar is like the maximum for this company?
I like I like to think that that's a good start. Yeah. I like
Right.
to think it's a good start. Unfortunately, it'll be the market that tells me what the company
Right,
is worth,
right.
not what I
I hear
tell
you.
the
I
market.
hear you. Look, I think for change, for pennies, for nickels, for dimes, you can own a portion of this company. And you are, when you buy shares, you become part owner. That's you are a partner, you are part owner. And then if you have part ownership in a company, why wouldn't you go out and tell everybody about your company, right? Tell them what,
100%.
hey, I'm part owner of this company. It's true, you are. And this is what we do, right? Take pride in that. It's something you can be proud of to say that you're part of this company as a part owner. Um, and that's how we make change, real change in the world every day and make it better. That is exactly how it gets done. Now we can spend our time on a bunch of stuff that at the end of the day doesn't really do anything other than create more divide. Or I don't know what your political affiliation is. I don't care. None of those things matter. What matters to me is you have a company that is doing things that will make this world a better, more efficient, safer place. That's what matters, right?
100%.
All right, Glenn, when should we have you back? What do you think's gonna you got anything else cooking, man, between now and I don't know, 6 months from now?
Yeah, we never turn the stove off, so something's always cooking. It's a question of how fast things happen. And, there's a lot of change in the world these days. I would say definitely within the next probably 6 or 8 weeks, we should have another conversation.
All right, sounds good. Glenn, thank you for taking the time to do this on a Saturday. I truly appreciate it. And for those of you that are just getting it to know this story, go to their website, sign up for their email alerts. That way you will stay on top of what's. Thank you for tuning in to another CEO interview here at Alpha Wolf Capital. Today we had Glen Lynch from Volatus Aerospace. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? And while you're at it, make sure you smash that subscribe button. All of those things are extremely important to us here at Alpha Wolf Capital, and we appreciate you taking time to do that. Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Capital wishes you the very best of success.